Steve, welcome, welcome,
Thank you.
welcome. So
Thank you.
glad you're here. We've had some discussions about how to make this beneficial to our listeners today. But would you start off just by talking to us through your journey of going from being a physician, a practicing physician, to doing what you're doing now? And you and this is just going to be a fun chat while I help myself and our other Medvaleans get to know you and kind of see what another physician has done, and maybe there's uh, some take homes for us.
You
So,
bet. You bet.
Steve, why don't you start off with giving us a little bit of an introduction and talking about how you became a physician entrepreneur. We have a lot of physician entrepreneurs, leaders, and other clinicians here on the screen today. So I think they're going to be interested
Yeah.
in your personal journey.
Yeah. Well, I have to tell you, thank you, Jim, for having me. And I see some familiar faces out there. So it's wonderful to be with you. As Jim had mentioned, I'm a family medicine physician. I went to medical school, undergraduate, and residency at University of California, San Diego. I was actually born here in San Diego, where I'm broadcasting from. And, the intent of my life was to see patients all day, every day for 35, 40 years and call it a day. And sometimes life takes a winding road. And that was certainly the case for me, but was not a deliberate or proactive effort. It was a reactive response to a profound opportunity I saw to tap the strategy of people development to fuel massive care team member contribution and fulfillment in the clinical life. And that's what I'm doing now. After finishing residency in 1994, as a part of the Sharp healthcare system, which is a large integrated system, about $6 billion a year here in San Diego, about 5 years into practice, the Sharp healthcare system made a commitment to become better for patients and better for care team members after getting some flashing red lights on our performance indicators, including things like contracting market share, low patient satisfaction, high clinician turnover, and just some cultural indicators that we needed to become better for our patients and we needed to become better for our care teams to retain our clinical talent and to retain patients in an immensely competitive healthcare environment. So we launched this organizational change effort called the Sharp Experience to improve the experience for patients, improve the experience for care team members. And the quantitative success measures for those things were patient experience and clinician engagement and turnover. So I was appointed to be the physician director for this. And
Steve, let me ask you, how did you come up with those? Did you think of those? Was that a survey?
It was just routine organizational metrics that were flashing red lights. We had patient experience. We had patient experience in the bottom decile. And those are, we were using the Prescott survey. And it was really, really clear that we needed to become better on that. And you can contract outward migration of patients, and that was a quantitative metric, and that was also an area of need. And we had physician attrition of 18%, despite living in America's finest city. So we had a big chunk of clinicians that were leaving. So we had these indicators that were quantitative reflections of cultural attributes of the organization that needed some strategic lift. So
did you have any exit interviews that were helping you know why?
Yeah, it was pretty, it wasn't a mystery. There was a lot of distrust between leadership and clinicians. There was not a lot of cohesiveness between primary care and specialty care. The organization was fairly siloed, with a lot of leaders being appointed or even elected, driven to protect turf of different departments. And it was not the sort of cohesive, unified effort where people helped and supported and collaborated with each other to execute a shared common goal of becoming extraordinary for patients. That was not the current state back in 2000. So,
Steve, why were you selected?
Well, I never really knew for sure, but I found out later one of the metrics on our physician dashboard is called peer review. And it's a survey of how do you feel about the colleagues that you work with as a colleague and clinician that you refer to, or a physician that refers to you. And it was that metric where I had done well. And there was no other screening mechanism. And maybe they thought I was going to be willing to do it. And so it was that peer review number that was perhaps a proxy for respective peers. And so I think that was the threshold, but there was nothing scientific about it. And I had no idea what I was supposed to be doing or how I was going to be doing it back in 2000.
Because you didn't mean to be doing that when you were being trained. Who knew? You were planning on being a regular doctor.
Yeah. So I was, I took a half day per week dedicated to being the director of the Sharp Experience. And my responsibility and goal was develop clinicians to help them contribute to our mission and goal of the Sharp Experience. And so really began developing coaching and development method. So we could go from not provisioning individually attributed data to clinicians and say, get better, but actually look at how could we help and support them deploy evidence-based behaviors to become better in the work that made our group and them better. And the sort of the first intervention I had done shortly after being appointed this position was thinking to myself, I have no idea how to coach and train and develop clinicians so they're both contributory to our group and doing their work in a way that allows them to love their clinical walk. But the first thing I'd done is I asked about 50 patients who came in during the course of just regular clinical work. And I said, tell me about the best clinician that you've ever known, that you've ever had. And I heard the same thing over and over and over again. I want a clinician who listens, who cares about me, who keeps me in the know, who includes me in decision-making, who is available to me when I need them. It was like 5 or 6 things that every single patient said in some form or another. So I created this Excel spreadsheet saying, this is what patients need to experience for them to walk out and say, I have the best care team ever. So on that Excel spreadsheet, I began to research what are the behaviors that we could do in the exam room that would prompt that sentiment. So a patient walking out saying, my doctor really cares about me. What do we do specifically that has that patient experience that? So I began by coaching myself and researching and asking questions and reading and getting mentored and just becoming a student of what are the evidence-based behaviors that prompt patients to have this sentiment and experience that prompts them to say, everybody I know, love, and care about has got to come here. This is an amazing care team and clinician. I wouldn't go anywhere else for my care. So I began to research and apply those behaviors in this sort of rapid cycle process, meaning what can we do in the exam room where patients walk out and say the best? And what happened next was sort of the nidus, if you will, for the starting of a company that coaches, trains, and develops people to become their best. And I found that I was able to transform the patient experience for me personally. For a decade straight, I achieved the 99th percentile in the patient experience without having to work any harder by doing a couple of simple things in the exam room. But I think more importantly, what happened was I began to really become proud of who I was in the exam room. And even in the context of chronic disease, self-limited disease, functional disease, things are very difficult to intervene and get a resolution of symptoms. I still felt as though by doing this constellation of behaviors that I was making meaningful impact via connectivity to patients. And so I found that the deployment of certain evidence-derived behaviors in the exam room that prompted the patient to say the best was remarkably restorative for me and highly effective in driving these metrics. And that pattern was replicated for every single clinician that was involved in coaching. So advance forward 10 years, the medical group was able to go from bottom decile to top decile in patient experience. We dropped attrition from 18% to below 4%. We created a 15% operating margin, won the Baldrige Award, acclaim awards from AMGA for clinical performance, and try to keep up with Paul Deschamps' group at Gould. So but we really built the culture of continuous improvement and people development for clinicians to be amazingly contributory, that was restorative with pride in a sense of, I am now being the kind of clinician that I thought I was going to be. And during the journey, as Jim had mentioned, I wrote the book Practicing Excellence, which sort of encapsulated some of those evidence-based behaviors. Ended up writing another book called Engaging Physicians, on how do we as leaders activate clinicians to lead locally, to advocate for what we want to become as an organization. But about around 2014, my life was spinning out of control. I was managing a 2,400 patient panel. I was still coaching and training clinicians in teams and leaders at Sharp. And I was traveling around the country taking leave without pay, speaking to other organizations who were interested in developing their clinicians as a catalyst to improve their performance. I mean, developing people to become their best is a very powerful engagement and improvement engine. And so and I had 2 young kids and a wife, and everything was falling apart because any one of those 3 could be a full-time position. So I was sitting in a Starbucks, thinking to myself that the development of people to become their best is transformative and almost entirely untapped as an improvement engine in healthcare. But it's really hard to scale, hard to sustain, hard to verify. It's just difficult. It was very analog, and workshops and shadowing and emails and talks, and it was just hard to scale. And so I thought, how could we use technology to power mastery and continuous improvement on the skills that make us better for patients, better for each other, better colleagues, and better leaders? And the idea that is now the company Practicing Excellence was born in that moment. And now, 8 years later, supporting 50, 60, 70,000 clinicians, and have a company of 40 people, using technology and micro-learning to advance patient connectivity, team collaboration skills, and leadership effectiveness skills and well-being skills, as an organizational approach to developing people to execute future state outcomes. So that's my story in a nutshell.
Yeah. Well, and Steve, in 3 minutes, I want to open this up. Tell us, if you can do it in 3 minutes, about maybe some more details of how you do it, the clinician experience project that you've started. And then I want us to talk about how you're so big into coaching. How could your coaching culture apply to our own Medvale healthcare organization? So that's a lot, but we could talk about it during the open mic part of it too. But anything else that you can maybe punctuate by what you do now?
Yeah, I think that the essence of what we've discovered through research, our own research, others' research, is that developing people to become their best is an essential trait of high functioning organizations across any industry. And so in healthcare, we hold people accountable with individually attributed data without giving them the tools and the guidance on how to become better for patients, how to advance a culture of safety, how to become a great teammate, how to reduce authority gradients, how to have conversations with patients about you can't drive anymore. I mean, who learned that one in residency, right? How to manage patients demanding antibiotics for viral illness. These are all sort of so important, nuanced skills to do well. And there's no real resource on how to become better. So we have found, and my life's mission is to develop people to become their best. And so we partner with organizations, and the organizations say, we ask the question, tell us what you aspire to become and to achieve, and how we measure and verify that success. And it could be everything from, we want to improve the patient experience and reduce out-of-network care, or it could be, we want to advance the wellness of our clinical care teams as measured by engagement and a well-being index. So once we identify what their big rock priorities are, then we map learning what we call microlearning that's done synchronously and focused on a population with use analytic engines and to verify participation and activation methods to bring learning to life. We now have 17 case studies in published literature demonstrating the efficacy. I'm so utterly convinced that developing people to become who they aspire to be is a powerful and almost entirely untapped mechanism in healthcare that we're now 100% confident of our ability to help and support people to become their best. And the cue from leadership teams of, we're not going to nag you, we're going to help you become the kind of clinician, the kind of care team, and the kind of organization you want to become a part of through continuous improvement and what we refer to as coaching, which is essentially helping people raise their capacity to create results.